Okay, so good morning, everyone. We'll see how long we go for today. I'm a full hour. I've had a very hectic morning already this morning. So see where we go. So welcome back to Spirit School. We're here to kind of talk about spirituality and also things to do with religion of different faiths, as well as, but mostly we look at kind of Kabbalah, and we look at religion through Christian lenses as well here. So today, welcome back. Glad to see some of your new faces and old for part 2 of our journey. And last week we explored a little bit about love and compassion and about the very essence of the divine, which is beyond dogma and beyond judgment. We're trying to look at things today and during these classes as things from a perspective away from religious dogma that often keeps people kind of stuck and not wanting to go look into this stuff. So ideally what we're going to do today is kind of try and get rid of some of the dogma and just look at things from a perspective, not only from Christian perspective, but also from a Jewish perspective as well as bringing in some of like Gnostic mysticism and various other kind of studies that I've studied along the way. And really the predominant idea of this is just trying to find the truth, somewhere that there is a truth that relies that is in there for all of us, that we can kind of find that supersedes religion and supersedes dogma. And today we're going to go a little bit deeper. Today we're exploring the divine spark within us all, and what it means to awaken that, how we can embody it through love, through compassion, and how we can kind of bring it more into our lives for daily lives. So let's take a moment to center ourselves. I've had a very busy morning. I've had to go and pick up my partner from the airport this morning, so I've been up since 5 a.m. So last week we had a chat about the Ein Sof, and Ein Sof is the infinite, limitless source of love that is predominantly the root of Kabbalah. And the Gnostics remind us that there is a higher divine that goes beyond this reality, and that we can all join this higher self, this higher version of us that is God. And I know some people find the word God triggering because of dogma and religion that we've all kind of been, forced to join in on at points in our lives. But it's this higher form of self, and it's actually not this judgmental part of this thing that people kind of look into. I think within a lot of religion, we think of this God as being this judgmental person that sits on top of a cloud and judges us all, whereas actually what we're looking at here is eternal light, is limitless source of love, is a higher divine that is God, that is bigger than us, greater than us, and has a view, an omnipotent, an omniscient view of the world that we don't have. And if we're able to access and commune and talk with this part of the universe, it can give us a better world, it can give us a better life, and it can give us a better and more faithful way of living that supersedes and transcends fear. And I think that's a beautiful experience. And so we're kind of trying to look at that a little bit today. If we can step into a more loving state and have that relationship with God, it's a better way to live. So the Gnostics remind us that everything that we live in here is an illusion. In effect, in Gnostic mysticism, they view the material world as an illusion. And it's something for us to try to get out of so that we can reconvene with God. And the Kabbalists look at Ein Sof, which is God, as this limitless source of love, and this limitless source of light as well. And the Christian mystics invite us to union with God as we look to finding love through ourselves and through our experience with other human beings and other spirits on this planet, but also to try to find a relationship with love through God. So we're going to be looking at some of those ideas today, and that was a recap of kind of where we were last week, but also where we're going to today. So if we think about God less of this Santa character that's got a naughty and nice list on top of, sitting on top of a cloud judging us all, and we look at it as more of this infinite light, then we can understand that in Kabbalah there is an idea that every soul carries this divine spark. and you've probably heard this in kind of new age technology, like descriptions or new age kind of ideologies as well, where people say that you're a spark of God consciousness walking around in the world, experiencing the world for itself. And there's some truth in that when we look at it from the Kabbalah. This idea that within everything in the world there is a spark of divine consciousness, and that includes that, you know, within the Kabbalah they also believe that everything from the cup to the pen to the flower to the dog, everything within the universe carries this infinite spark of the divine light. In Gnosticism, they describe something quite similar. So they consider that there is a divine seed within us that longs to return to its source, to God. And Christian mystics often speak about the inner Christ, that there is a living presence of God within the soul. And I think that when we come back to a lot of these traditions, what we find is that they all kind of point to this same truth, that the divine, God, is not this thing that is exterior to us, that's just out there, but there's this living presence of God that lives within all of us as well, that is present within our souls, within our spirit. And I think that this is a beautiful way to think about things. And I think sometimes the best way to go with religion and dogmatic practices is to read as much as you possibly can from all of these religions and all of these ideas, because all of them have some good in them at the very least, and try to find the consistent truth that is spoken between all of these kind of dogmas and doctrines and ideologies and theologies. And I think that when you come to read a lot of the theology like I have, because it's a special interest of mine, you find that all of the traditions point back to this same truth, that the divine is not just out there, but it's also within us. And when you try to step away from dogma and you read a lot of theologies and you read a lot of mysticism and Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and, you know, the Torah and the Sefer Yetzirah, and you read the Bible, a lot of these books all point towards the fact that there is a part of God that exists within you, as well as there being a God that exists outside of us as well. And it seems to be that the soul is aware of this, and throughout our lives we're trying to find our way back to God, to be able to come back to being one with God. And the Gnostics describe this as a process of basically becoming immaterial, where we're trying to shed the material world. Typical Christians talk about not joining in worldly things, because it's the worldly things that separate us from God. And Kabbalah talks about how there are things that we have within our life that we're having to redirect ourselves back to God, because we have, you know, a thing called tikkun, which is corrections in our lives, where we have become separated from God as a result of these kind of karmas that have come into our lives that separate us. They're called klippa, which is shells, which separates us from the light of God by covering us. They act as coverings from the light of God. And so Gnostics kind of think of the human body as this thing that separates us. Christians tend to think of that joining in those worldly things that separate us. That would be those typical sins that we kind of involve ourselves in that separate us from God. And of course these things would separate us from God, because they are the opposite of God. If God is love and God is light and God is this infinite light of love, if you have anything that creates guilt or shame or pain or suffering or anything that is of this negative, this inversion from God, of course these things would separate you from God, because they are the antithesis of it. They're the antithesis of God. They're the antithesis of the energy of God. And I like to think about this a little bit like in science. In science, there isn't a thing called cold. There's the absence of heat. And there isn't a thing called dark. There's the absence of light. And I think that science is a beautiful one for proving this about God and about religion and about what God is like, because there isn't darkness, there is just the absence of light. There isn't evil per se, there is the absence of God. There isn't hatred, there's the absence of love. And if we think about it a little bit like that, we can recognize that a lot of the things that separate us from God is because we have shielded ourselves from the light of God. We're shielding ourselves from the love of God. We're shielding ourselves from these things that are actually godly, that are actually beautiful, that are actually loving and kind. And when we separate ourselves from those things, it's often because we've gone into things that are worldly, that are not of God, that are not holy, and create shame and create guilt and create hatred in ourselves and all of these things. And those things are the absence of God. It's why you're separated from God in these moments. It's not because you've been forsaken, it's because you have chosen to become separated from God. And you've chosen to become separated from God because you have, you have will. God doesn't want you to be some little, thing that it's pushing around and making you do things. That's not what God is about. God has given you free will to be able to do whatever. And part of your free will could be separation from God. It could be that you are wanting to do something that creates hatred or pain or harm or lust or all of these things that separate you from God. And the reason why God gives these kind of ideologies about things not to do isn't because he's trying to control you. It's not because it's trying to control you. It's because it's trying to teach you what it is that you should do to stay close to God. And so the Christian Gnostics, they say that you are supposed to kind of shed the worldly things and to not join in on the worldly things because the things within the world are illusions. And the same as the Kabbalah. Kabbalah talks about how we're supposed to try and get back to Ein Sof by moving through the layers of worldliness, of the Sephirot, if you like, of trying to kind of clear all of this stuff that keeps us separated from God. And so what does it all mean? What does all this mean? It's a lot of kind of interesting words in education and theology, and hopefully you guys are interested in this. But what does it really mean from us? Well, it means that we are not separate from love, and that we don't have to earn it, and that we don't have to chase it. It means that God's love and the love from God and the endless light is always there. And it's always quietly burning within you as this spark of God consciousness that is within all of us, if we allow it to. And if we are not feeling the love of God and we're not feeling the light of God, it isn't because God has turned away from us. It is because we have turned away from God. And the beauty of that is that it's in your control at any point to turn back and to experience the love of God and to turn back and have faith. And I know a lot of people, and I started this school last whenever it was, the last one we did, one of the ladies that came was worried about praying again because she felt like maybe God would judge her, that she'd been away for a while. And God never judges you for being away for a while. There's a story of the prodigal son in the Bible, where he just welcomes you back because he's glad you're home. He's not there to tell you off for being gone or to tell you off for what you haven't done or to tell you off. It's just, I'm glad that you're back. I'm glad that you've returned. So we can take a moment. I'm just going to mute you there, Trace. If you can mute yourself, Tracy, that would be great. I can't seem to do it on my end. Thank you. So our spiritual work isn't to awaken it. It's not that we need to, find this light back again and relight it. What we need to do is to simply remember who we are, or to remember that God is always there and God has always been there, and that light is always burning. And if you are ready to turn around and feel the warmth on your face and the warmth of God in your heart, it will be there waiting for you at any moment. But we have to take ourselves away from the things that separate us from it. And anything that isn't from love, anything that isn't from the light of God, anything from those things, so hatred, judgment, anger, resentment, unforgiveness, the 7 deadly sins, coveting, lust, all of these things. The reason why we're told not to partake in those things is because it separates us from the light of God. And it does us harm, ultimately, because anything that isn't from God is harmful, does cause us harm, because being outside of the light of God is a horrible way to live. It's a difficult way to live. It's a life that's created through fear and through a lot of suffering and a lot of worry and a lot of concern. And again, all of those things again perpetuate a life which can be very difficult, because you're sitting outside of the warmth of the light of God. So let's take a moment to come to do some meditation, some prayer, some guided reflection. So if you want to take a moment to close your eyes and just take some deep breaths. And, you know, depending on how you want to do things, feel free to put your hands together if that's how you feel comfortable. If you want to cover your eyes, you can do that. If you just want to sit quietly, do whatever you need to do just to kind of experience this. And I'd like you to close your eyes, because it allows us to, again, come away from the worldly things, the world, you know, the matrix, the 3D world that is always trying to get our attention and always trying to draw us away from the things that are important. And I'd like you to bring your attention to your heart space in the center of your chest. I just imagine then the second there that there is a small flame glowing within there. And for some of you it might be small, because it might not be something that you've thought of for a while. It might not be something that you've tended to. And for some of you this may be a beautiful full glow, because it's something that you tend to regularly, it's something that you pay attention to regularly. And if I want you to think about this, that this is your divine spark. This is pure, radiant love. And notice how it feels gentle, steady, eternal. This part of you that was there before the universe was created, before you had a name, before you were incarnated as a soul. That spark of light was there from the very beginning. And with each breath in, I'd like you to see that flame growing a little brighter. Filling your body, filling your mind, surrounding you with warmth, with light. Now I'd like you to imagine that light connecting through a beam to all of the people in your home. And if there's no one in your home, imagine perhaps in your building. If you're not in a building, imagine perhaps to the buildings to the sides of you, to your neighbours. If you have no neighbours, then perhaps as far to the next town as wherever the closest person is away from you. Imagine that beam of light being connected to everyone else in this world. Because we are all ultimately connected. We are all divine sparks of consciousness. We are all God. And we are all together as one. There is only one light. The light of God shining through many flames. And each one of those flames is alive in each one of you, each one of us. Whether you believe it or not, it's there. This isn't something you have to believe to experience, because it's just truth. And that's the beauty of truth, is that truth is eternal. And just take a moment to rest in that truth. That God's love is within you. It's within all of us. And we are all ultimately connected as one. Just take a deep breath in. And when you're ready, you're welcome to open your eyes and bring yourself back into the present moment. And I want you to think about, how can we bring this into our present lives? How can we bring this energy into our everyday lives? You know, if the divine spark is alive within all of us, then how do we live from that awareness on a daily basis? How can we bring this divinity into our choices, into our actions, into everything that we do? Because if we did that, if we came from a place of understanding that the divine spark of God that's within me, that is within me, is also within you, then we wouldn't be in wars. We wouldn't be killing each other. We wouldn't be harming each other. We wouldn't be hurting each other, because we would recognize that in hurting you, I'm hurting myself. I like to think of the individuals as like finger puppets on the hand of God. We sit there and we identify ourselves as thumb or finger or finger or finger, but ultimately we're all just finger puppets on the hand of God. There is no separation when you recognize that you're all on the same hand. If I were to cut my little finger off, do you not think that would affect the thumb? And this is the kind of world that we're living at the moment, that we're so separated. We all feel like we're such individuals that the little finger is cutting off the thumb, not thinking it will affect it. But we are all ultimately one. To bring this into your daily life, it starts with compassion. And mysticism, Kabbalah, Gnosticism, Christianity isn't just about these lofty experiences where we connect to something for a moment and we get chills and we get excited and it feels really good. It's about how you act every single day. It's about how you treat yourself and how you treat other people. And I see far too many people who are preaching and they are not living what they are preaching. They're saying that they're good people, they're kind people, I'm this, I'm that, the other, but they live from a place of anger, they live from a place of guilt, they live from a place of shame, and they project that onto everybody in their lives. So what we need to recognize is that compassion starts with ourselves. We have to be compassionate towards ourselves and our behaviors, our problems. And when we have compassion for ourselves, that seeps out. When we forgive ourselves, it seeps out. So some simple practices. When you begin to feel frustrated, I want you to pause and remember that the other person that you're dealing with has a spark of the divine too. The separation between this idea of us and them causes us to treat them like an enemy, like a stranger, like somebody that should be dealt with cruelty and anger. But if we can come back to recognizing that this is my brother, this is my sister, this is a family member, this is a finger on the same hand that I'm part of, then we can come back to kindness in a much easier manner. When you feel self-critical, I want you to place your hand on your heart and remind yourself that I carry the light of God within me. And I want you to try to view yourself from that higher perspective. How would God see me now? Because God is all loving and God is light, endless light. And God doesn't look at you and think, you're bad, you're naughty, you deserve to suffer. That's not how God looks at you. God feels probably quite sad at points if God was able to feel emotions, but I don't think God feels emotions in the same way that we feel emotions. But God would feel sad if we were able to quantify it in emotions, because you have separated yourself from him through your own self-judgment. And all God wants is for you to be part of it in one. When you see suffering, I want you to ask, how can I bring love here? Even in a small way. And again, start with yourself. You know, some people might find it easier to start with others than to start with the self, but start with yourself. When you're suffering, how can you find a way to come back to love, to the divine spark, to godliness? And one of the best ways to do that would be to look for how you can bring some love to the moment. You know, some kindness, some self-compassion, lack of judgment, lack of guilt or shame. How can I find love in this moment for myself and for those in it? And living this way doesn't mean that you're perfect. You're never going to be perfect. That's not what this is about. We will continue to sin. We will continue to suffer. We'll continue to do things that are bad. We will continue to judge. We'll continue to do things that separate us from the light of God all the time. Every day we'll do that, and we'll catch ourselves doing it. And this is why that self-compassion is really important, because you'll be like, oh, I'm doing it again. But what's really important is that we're recognizing it. And every time we recognize that we're doing it, we try to come back to alignment. We try to bring ourselves back into alignment, letting that inner light guide our choices instead of being something that separates us. So we need to find those moments where we take a time to come back to love, to come back to compassion, to come back to joy, and to ask ourselves, how am I separating myself from God right now? Because once again, it's us that separates ourselves from God, not God that separates us from it. So today, within your choices, I'd like you to think about how your choices have maybe in your life create guilt. What choices do you have in your life that maybe create shame, that create anger, that create problems in our lives? Is there people that you see that only lead to pain and suffering that you need better boundaries with? Are there things that you partake in, alcohol, drinking, smoking, doing drugs? Is there food that you eat that separates you because it creates shame and guilt and resentment within yourself? And if there is anything that you have in your life that causes you to have low compassion for yourself, low love for yourself, that creates an environment of self-hatred in yourself, then recognize that that's probably definitely something that needs to change. And that is how we end up separating ourselves from the light of God. And it's when we live in lives like that, it stops a faithful life. And a faithful life for me is one that doesn't have fear in it, because I know no matter what is happening, it's happening for the best of me. And I know no matter what I do, there is a higher plan. And it just takes the fear off of things. And when I start to join in worldly things too much, and I start to, dampen that divine spark of light within me, it causes me to get more fearful, and I start to do knee-jerk reactions, and then things start to spiral. So when we can come back to practicing alignment and trying to live from a place of love and kindness and compassion, that floods out from ourselves. We see it across the world to other people that we have life, that we experience life with, and it also brings us back to the warmth of faith and with God. So I'd like you again to just join me for a short meditation once more. If you would like to close your eyes or do whatever feels right for you, I'd like you just to breathe deeply for a moment and just reconnect to that spark of light that's within you once more. And just know that it's there at all times. It's there. I often find when I do this, I get emotional. It makes me want to cry, because I know that there is a lot of times in my life that I separate myself from that feeling. And it's like when you come back to it, it is that prodigal son. It's that you've done the things that you shouldn't do. And then there's your mother, there's your father waiting for you with open arms. They still love you regardless of what you've done, regardless of the shame that you feel, regardless of the guilt that you feel for doing the thing that you feel like you shouldn't have done. And just imagine that light expanding, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, bigger and bigger and bigger, until all there is light. Just light, no separation, just pure union. And I'd like you to take a second just to whisper to yourself, either in your mind or out loud, I am love. I am loved. I am a spark of the divine. And I want you to take that truth with you as you go into your life today. and as you go about your life in general. Recognize that at any moment, at any time, you can reconnect to that spark of God consciousness, that spark of love that sits within you, that is waiting for you to come back to it with open arms, with love. So open your eyes when you're ready. I'd like to thank you guys for being here today and to showing up with open hearts. And remember that the divine spark is always alive within you. It's always there. It always wants to guide you. Let it guide you. Let it soften you. Let it fill your life up with compassion for yourself and compassion for others. And I pray that you may walk in love, that you may live in light, and that you always remember that you are never separate from God, which means that we are never separate from each other. So there's never a reason to feel lonely. There's never a reason to feel sad. There's never a reason to feel unloved, because it's there always, just waiting for you to connect back to it. So thanks, guys. And we'll see if we can come on for another live at some point. If you're on TikTok, just keep your eyes open. I'll try and put up an event somewhere for that. And if you're interested, feel free to send me a message. And for those live on the live stream, I'm not going to do a Q&A and everything today because we're very tired, but feel free to message me if you've got any questions or anything. And I look forward to seeing you for the next one. Thank you for joining me today. Bye, guys. Take care of yourselves. Love you all.